Kia ora and welcome to the You Be the Judge podcast show. My name is Wiri Tamoni. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Doctor Jacquelyn Elkington. Kia ora and welcome to the show, Dr. Jacquelyn.
Kia ora, Wiri. Thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for the invitation. I've been just looking so forward to catching up with you again. And really appreciate this opportunity to chat, talk.
Awesome. Same here. It's been a while since we've actually had a good catch up, and we've actually done quite a lot of things in the past. So if you don't mind, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are for the listeners out there?
Ka pai. Well, tēnei te mihi te tuatahi ki te atua, nā nei nā mea katoa. Ko he kurangi te maunga, ko te awa, ko ngā te parau me tarara o nei iwi, ko Jacquelyn tōku ingoa. Kei whakatāne e noho ane nai nei, I tupu haere a hau kei tākaura ki te tonga, engari I whānau mai a hau kei te waipainamu, ko whakatū Nelson. Not toko marewhai, where my ancestors lie, and where I say I am from. And I guess I really wanted to acknowledge our connection because I think 2009 when we met you, no, it might have been a little bit earlier, we were in trouble at the time. Is it all right if we start to talk about that?
Aye,
and the trouble that I was in was around the monetary system, and we had unintentionally, genuinely got ourselves into some debt problems, and it was Dr. Rawiri Waratini Karena that introduced us to you, and you were able to share with us some interesting concepts around the monetary system and around the actual fraud that it is. We learnt about contract law. You helped us to understand that our deposit, our 10%, our hard-earned 10% deposit for a lousy car, which was a lousy, I don't know, back then, $1,000 or something, but nevertheless hard-earned, was actually used to and benefit a bank that could borrow 90 against it. And that borrowing actually meant any alleged debt that I had was actually not a debt in my name at all. And when we began to understand how disclosure and lack of disclosure, full disclosure works, how that deposit works, and fractional banking is hidden in plain sight. Banks are quite open about fractional banking and how it works, but they don't disclose exactly how it benefits them and puts us in debt, alleged debt. To be tricked into a signature situation, a corporation situation, to be tricked into believing that I'm signing as an individual and being tricked into a corporation situation with another corporation was just complete fraud. And as we began to understand these things, I guess you helped us to experiment with a promissory note. We wrote a promissory note and it worked because thousands of dollars of fines to the council disappeared. How does that happen if there isn't something else going on where evidence of a debt cannot actually be provided, where profit loss accounts can't be proven? And so where have I put the car company when their accounts are in a lot of credit? So, and as much as we didn't understand the detail, we figured out quite quickly that there was another agenda that was designed to work against us and serve a dominant privileged people or group of people. And so that's how we met, through that help. And we knew of you because you were famous, and you still are famous, for the You Be the Judge radio station that you were running in Kirikiriroa at the time. And at the time, the only alternative media. And even that connection, that radio station was hard to listen to or get access to, because mainstream was so thick with propaganda and so dominant. And of course, that mahi that you did on the radio was so different. And then we asked you, do you remember we asked you to come to Te Wānanga or
Yes.
Aotearoa to give a presentation there? And you blew people's minds out of the water, because you're talking about a movement, a zeitgeist movement.
And a new economic system.
And the economic system and how money works for the privileged, and unfortunately not for us as a common ordinary person. And so 2010, when you came to Te Wānanga was like just an amazing experience to know that you were one of very few, because Vinnie Eastwood, famous now as well for the freedom fighting that he does and for the alternative media that he reports on, that you were amongst those greats who are still going today. And then, of course, you left our country and you went overseas to be, I'm sure, a positive influence for good, an awakening consciousness, and to know that you are back. Nā te mea, he Māori koe, he tangata whenua, he koi te henakaru. And so to you, Wiri, tēnei te mihi kia koe, he mihi. Nā
Thank
mihi.
you. Thank you so much. It was an amazing experience. Doing the presentation at the Wānanga at that time, we talked about various topics and alternatives to a monetary system, and a whole bunch of things, and then helping you out with your cases back then. And we actually woke a few people up too as well, and we created a team. And it's good seeing that team go out there and help others awaken as well. And I think this is what we've seen over the past few years now. And yes, my journey took me overseas. I had to go over there. That was my hikoi, my Wairua calling. But now I've come back, and I've been back for I think 6-7 months now, because the Wairua called me to come back. I was over in Vietnam last year and had this calling. You need to go back. And I'm thinking, what? Go back to where? New Zealand. You need to go back to New Zealand. I kept getting that feeling. And then the next day my mum would ring and go, hey, when are you coming back? And I thought, that's like a confirmation. And then I had friends the next day after that going, hey, are you going to come back to New Zealand next year? I want you to do this. And I was going, okay, all right, now let me see. I need to go and check back then it was MIQ, that system. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to ever get a seat in that MIQ or a spot there. And I went on there and I got a spot straight away. And I thought, what the heck? And I got in. And the flights then back to New Zealand, this was last year, December, were about $5,000 one way. And I thought, wow, that's quite expensive. Usually it's $600 one way, but $5,000, so much. And then I went through the different airlines and I found one for around $1,000 to come back. And I thought, wow. So, the Wairua just paved the way for me to come back. And I have certain things to do back here. And one of them is this podcast and talking to people who are going to express some of their experiences, their thoughts, and it's to help us grow and help the community. So this is where you come on board, Jacquelyn. So I'm really appreciative that you've come on board the show here, and you've told us a little bit about your, I would say, awakening. And I wanted to delve into a whole bunch of different things, but I wanted to reflect over the last 2 years, the events over the last 2 years globally and locally here. And I want to get your thoughts on how you thought the government here in New Zealand's reacted and how you've seen New Zealanders react from your observations.
Oh, yeah, look, absolutely unacceptable. Historically, as a Ngāti Porou, mana wahine, as a small child growing up, we were historically taught, don't trust the government. It was just a thing. You don't trust the government. You think for yourself. You take what there is to be given, of course, especially if it's free, take it, use it, but be careful and be wary. So we were always taught, and pharmaceutically, we had our own rongoa, we had our own amenities to build, we had our own fish to eat, shellfish. We were never short of food because we grew it, planted it, hunted it, gathered it ourselves. So to go to a doctor was something that was never a go-to. So historically, there's always been and we've always been encouraged to think for ourselves. I think up in Rangata, we grew up knowing that education was important. We grew up expecting that we would be part of an education system, but to walk in two worlds, kia mau ki te rākau atu Pākehā, and he whai atu nā mātauranga o te Pākehā, engari kaue wareware o kia mau ki ngā uara o te ao Māori. So we were yes, chase the pursue education, but hold fast to your values as a Māori. So we were taught to walk two worlds in that way, and I suppose it was that background that we've always been raised with, we've always had. When I went to university, I gained a Bachelor of Social Science because I was interested in knowing what made me tick, what made me think, what made me feel, what made me behave the way that I do. And those are the three schools of thought as a major psychology that is taught, which is what we think, what we feel, and what we do. And I began to wonder how the Wairua side of things was part of what we think, what we feel, what we do. And of course, Whare Tapawhā came along, and Mason Jury actually gave us permission to integrate what we think, what we feel, what we do with a Wairua, with a force bigger than ourselves. And it's interesting that throughout the years, throughout the ages, throughout education in particular, it is interesting that the curriculum has taken out what it means to have a relationship with God, what it means to be a spiritual person or a religious person. And looking back now, I think that taking out God from the curriculum is deliberate. And so how do we counteract that? Basically, we bring him back in. And so, of course, teaching after a master's degree and achieving a master's degree in counselling, I began to understand that narrative therapy, which is what we were taught at Waikato University, was about stories, and that we make sense of our time through stories. And I began to understand how narratives work. And of course, the governments have a very interesting narrative, which was a narrative that I didn't relate to very well. But having been taught as a Ngāti Porou, as a master's student, that narratives have alternative stories, they have opposite stories, and that we can be author stories, I was really keen to find an alternative one. And there were many stories. And so to be told that there is one source of truth was straight away a flag, and kind of not even, I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and even our prophet, who is the president of the church, never say that. One source of truth, because I have a branch. He has 2 counsellors. Then I have an auxiliary leader. Then I have a president of counsellors, a board, all of whom we counsel with, and we discuss issues of religion, of faith, repentance, baptism, and Holy Ghost. We would claim to be that source of truth for our youth, for our children, for each other. So that was a obvious red flag. And then as a narrative therapist, it became quite clear to me that another narrative needed to be created, and we had the power as people to create it for ourselves. And so empowering time, as much as it was a shock to hear, we knew straight away, yep, okay, there's a flag. I'm going to follow this road. I'm going to follow this story and make my own plot, make my own stories, and be the co-author of my own story. And it's a story that's been developing over history, over generations. So just waiting actually to be developed and created with others like yourself, Wiri.
That narrative that we have seen over the past 2 years it's one that was definitely created, and it's divided a lot of people, not only from their families, but also from their divine connections as well. And it's trying to even do that more as we move forward into the next few phases of what seems to be something that's going to lead up to a climax very, very shortly. So where do you think we are today in New Zealand after experiencing what's been going on the past 2 years?
I think people are in an exciting time of that recreation. We have taken 2 years to deconstruct a situation that is not working for us. We've deconstructed and asked questions about who is behind this narrative. Where did it come from? Why are we buying into it when it doesn't serve us? In fact, it serves maybe 1% of this global population, which global population are rather open, not, what's the word, not showing off. They're showing off about the $1 billion and $1 trillion profit that they're making. They're quite open about that. Big tech giants have found ways to use our data and information as weapons against us. We have been providing information and data too, and they have been used against us. So this is disappointing. I think one of the other theories that I've come to understand as a social scientist is social constructionism. And it doesn't take a social scientist to know that we construct our realities. We, as social beings, human beings are social. So we construct our realities, and we have to be the ones that are prescribed to us. Where are we in New Zealand? I think some of us are still deconstructing that old story and are in a place of reconstructing a new story, or one that's been sitting there and is now confirmed and been given permission to, hey, yeah, let's go grow our own food. Let's be our own government. Let's govern ourselves. And because one, I'm a responsible person. Two, I'm kind and caring. Three, I know more about my environment, and here in Whakatane, here in the street, here in amongst my neighbourhood, than any centralised global committee or forum could know. And that's not their fault that they don't know, although how they can't know with all the data we've been providing them is a mystery. And having said that, there is some information that has been used against us. So exciting times, although I think things will get worse as people continue to try and make work what they've known for generations to, and that is a narrative that they've believed in, which is grow up, get a job, get rich, chase cars, chase houses, get as much money as you can, and step on whoever you need to get it, and we'll be happy. And there's a realization that actually money's cars and being unkind and fraudulent and telling lies is not working out after all. And so Paulo Freire says this about those who violate others' rights, those who the oppressors and those who violate other people's rights dehumanize themselves. They lose a connection with humanity, and they're finding that it's not working out. And so it's up to us as the oppressed to rise, to show kindness and what it means to be a human, and follow our instincts around that as we are guided by a Heavenly Father, a force that's greater than ourselves, a force that is limitless love and peace and unity.
So yes, over the past 2 years, we've seen a whole bunch of things come out in this narrative, from censorship to restrictions, and I would say to more dependency on an entity, and we've seen that happen over the this period of time, but also throughout history, we've seen that slowly, incrementally move up, so that we give more of our powers away and more of our rights away. And this is something I wanted to talk to you about. Like, when was the turning point for you to sort of go into that sort of movement of, I would say, freedom fighting, and to hold on to your rights and your freedoms?
Oh, absolutely good question, Wiri. And I think the turning point was when the virus came into the country, or we were told that there was a deadly virus. 85,000 people were expected to die from this terrible disease. And so one of the ways to thwart this disease and the killing and the dying was to take a jab, an injection. Now, during the PhD studies, there's two parts to gaining a PhD, and one of them is research. And the other one is, what is the other one? Oh, well, I wanted to talk about holistic well-being. So part of research is to undergo strict protocols and ethical guidelines around a couple of things. And I completed my ethics application with Te Wānanga or Te Whare Wānanga Awanuiarangi. And I don't think I think the ethical guidelines are standard amongst all universities. And that is this, that when we explore a theory, a medical treatment, a medicine, a product, a commodity, we must provide some information about the theory. We must provide some information. So to undergo and get ethics approved, I was asked to provide some information about this theory I wanted to explore. So information sheet is a basic and a standard. And the next part of that protocol of research, ethical research, is a consent form. And a consent form means that participants who want to explore with me, with us as a PhD research team, need to be willing. Participants need to be knowing, informed, willing. They need to be provided an opportunity to withdraw from the study, from the exploring, for whatever reason, without repercussions. And so these sorts of guidelines are put into place before we can even explore a theory or a medical treatment or a product, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we know this about research. Another part of ethical research is to provide feedback forms, is to provide ways where participants who are willing and informed can provide some feedback about what is being explored, what is being tested, what is being trialled here, what is being investigated, what is being moulded. And the participants must be provided with that opportunity, whether that be by written or verbal. And so most research trials undergo this kind of protocol so that the feedback can be integrated, so that we conclude and discuss and conclude the best theory, the best product that we can put out. So these sorts of protocols are standard for research, theories, products, medical treatments are trialled and tested. And we understand that this jab was a clinical trial and doesn't end till November 2023. So as a researcher, it flags me up again when the information sheet given to me about this jab was a couple of sentences long. The information I was given was, WHO said, CDC said, Dr. Fauci, some guy who works as a virologist and lied about some of the science and experimentation that was going on in Wuhan, sort of changed the story halfway through. We're trying to understand the definition of vaccination, and then that definition has changed halfway through 2020. The definition of vaccination become not only must include some of the virus, which still has not to date been isolated, to vaccination only needs now to include or incorporate part of a virus, and the rest of what's in that vaccination, I don't know, maybe released in 30 years' time, 50 years' time, maybe 75 years. So as a researcher, this was not going to pass my ethics committee at Te Whare Wānanga Awanuiarangi, that's for sure. Major problems. Most clinical trials, as a psychology student, we participated in many clinical trials. We're students, the whole practice on the students, but we were willing and we knew the risks. We might be traumatized a week or so. Our esteem has been tested, etc. But we knew the risks and we were paid for it. I haven't completed a medical clinical trial without having received less than $3,000. So, of course, my first question was, yes, I will participate in this clinical trial. Where's my $3,000? Nothing. Well, that put me off straight away. And then to be offered KFC in South Auckland, where I was like, KFC, hangi. It just became insulting after that, Wiri, to be offered so little for so much when the risks were so much higher than the benefits, and when basic scientific ethical guidelines had not been followed. So to know that there were nurses and doctors that were not participating was of no surprise to me, because they're research-minded, most doctors and nurses, and so of course they're going to wait for the experiment to come out with its results. And then as a researcher, to see data treated with such disrespect was mind-boggling for me as a researcher, because data and information and feedback is precious to a scientific experiment. And to see that the calm research reporting system is pretty ad hoc. It's, if you want to report an adverse reaction, go for it. doctors, sometimes they put up a report of an adverse reaction, sometimes not, was just unacceptable. So straight away, we know that the data is skewed, the data is contaminated, and any results that come out at November 2023 next year is already contaminated and null and void. And so those simple, basic research ethical guidelines that weren't followed were kind of the more red flags for me around promoting the jab, which I couldn't promote it honestly and ethically, not even as a health practitioner.
Other health practitioners can't promote it as well. And getting back to what you said about the data being skewed, lately I've seen a lot of data and the stats accumulated under, I would say, word magic. The words say died with and the words died from. So there in itself, data and stats can be, as I said, manipulated, word magic. And this has happened throughout history too. They call it the tyranny of words and how it's implemented into society because it's not updated to present day knowledge. And so we get manipulated by little things like that. And you got to really take notice of those things because they can be used as I say, as weapons to manipulate people. And what would you like to see happen in New Zealand?
I would like to see more questions asked. We need to still maintain respect and a sense of integrity and bring integrity back by asking the questions. Why is the data being manipulated this way? Why are words meaning one thing and actually meaning another? Why is natural immunity not, it used to be used, what's the word, interchangeably with vaccination, and because we can become immunized naturally or become immunized by vaccination. So why has natural immunity dropped off the scale of health and well-being? Who is behind this? Who and where are these ideas coming from that a little rural city in Whakatane needs somebody from Davos or somebody from World Economic Forum making decisions for me? And these are people that aren't elected. So we need to ask more questions about who is making these decisions. And I think we need to come to trust our own intuition. We need to bridge in faith, instill hope in the knowing that truth prevails and that there is, a force bigger than ourselves that is loving and good.
Do you think that Labour will get in again for the next election, just going by what they've done over the past 2 years?
I don't think so, but I don't think National are going to get in either. They're recognised now as almost two wings on the same bird, and that's how people are referring to both Labour and National. So I don't think either of them are going to get in. I think there's going to be a unity of minority parties.
That's what I see coming through right now. There's a couple of minority parties that are getting some momentum out there, and I think a lot of people are not fooled anymore that there are different masks on the same face, I will call it, and we're seeing that with the current parties, the current major parties in New Zealand. There's really no difference at all. They're kind of still on this agenda trunk line going this way, and it doesn't really matter who you vote for in those terms. They're still going to try and get their way that they can.
We are awakened to an agenda that you were talking about years ago with Vinnie Eastwood, who was talking about the same agenda too, but it was Agenda 2020 or something back then.
Agenda 21.
Which agenda has somewhat been thwarted because it's 2022. And while that agenda has been shifted to 2030 or 2050, we need to continue to thwart that agenda. Don't you agree? And we're doing a pretty good job, I think. We're on track to thwarting it. Do you think?
I think humanity is on track at the moment. I see this awakening happening. Agenda 21 was sort of a little springboard for the ones who are pushing this narrative, and Agenda 2030, which now the United Nations has classed Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which really is a mask, and it's really just a front. But underneath it, it's moving more to a centralized world government under a group of a few elites. And that's what is the real agenda. And of course, Agenda 2030 coincides with a cycle that ends in 2030. And it's moving into more of the Sanskrit terms. Sanskrit says that in 2030, there's going to be the ending of the Kali Yuga cosmic cycle. And that began about 4,450 BC, and it ends in 2030, and it's the end of the Iron Age, and we're going to transition in Sanskrit to what they call the Manvantara age, which is the complete development of humanity. So I see that being one timeline, but I also see another timeline being formed, and this is, I would say, an artificial timeline that's been formed. And I think this is where this Agenda 2030 is sort of taking humanity on this path towards what they say is the Great Reset, which will lead towards what's coming. And what's coming doesn't look very good for humanity. 2030, are there any sort of biblical comparatives to the end times in that regard?
Yeah, other than their prophecies are being fulfilled under our noses right now. And we know that the coming of our Lord Savior Jesus Christ is near. My understanding from my limited point of view about that there is still a lot of work to do for the word to go forth. So while we're talking about an awakening, there is still a lot of awakening to happen. And my understanding is that the gospel needs to be spread out as well, because it's one thing to be awakened in the science and awakened to profit over people. And it's one thing to science isn't working or it's another thing to be awakened to a consciousness of knowing of some force that is limitless, and whether we call that God or Heavenly Father or
divine.
I still think that awakening still to happen more. That makes sense. But while that is occurring, I like to think that the good at heart and meek will inherit the earth, and we will, through our kindness and our efforts of caring, be somewhat secure, and we'll have peace of heart, peace of mind, and we push on. There's something else that you raised that I wanted to ask you about, and that is the words, because we hear the word sovereign a lot, and that has various meanings, but it is particularly disturbing that a future meaning of the word could actually apply to a class of dominant, privileged, rich people. That really concerns me. And so please share your understanding, and we are beginning to understand about the basic income, the UBI, and that social credit system is on its way. In some ways, has it already been here? We've just called it something else. We've already got a 2-tier unemployment system. We've got an unemployment system for the poor who are unemployed, and we have an unemployment system that's just come in the last 2 years of businesses that have gone bankrupt, that have had to close down, who are on a different tier of wage subsidy or whatever subsidy are given to businesses to stay somewhat afloat or in a position where they can stay open but really not be operating. So is that system in its baby stages already? And for a lot of people, that actually might be a great thing. I see middle class, I feel aroha and empathy for middle class who have worked all their lives to, to own their homes, their boats and houses and rental properties. They have worked hard, but are at risk of losing all, so that a distribution of wealth could be fairer according to their gender. And so for some poor people who are going to have some of that, a little bit of that wealth through a basic income that they get every week, $1,000 a week or whatever, it's going to look pretty attractive because they don't already own anything. And Schwab, Klaus says we're going to be happy, not own anything, but be happy. Well, we already own nothing.
Yep, he presents that saying. He presents it along with the Great Reset. But you're right, Klaus Schwab does mention you will own nothing, but you will be happy. And going back to the social credit, we've seen that actually happen in China. Now, China have been, I think, beta testing it, however you say the word, for the past 2 years now. They've also beta tested the UBI, Universal Basic Income, in a few European countries and that. And they've pulled out all these little testers and testing things. And I would say off the cuffs that the whole 2 years through this whole CV, I would call it saga, that was also a beta test. That was a test to what's coming. And what I see coming is from also an information leak that's been revealed last week. It's a social credit system information leak which reveals the elite's plan for the future. And what it actually shows there is a group of white hat hackers. Now, white hat hackers are people who go into, say they work for a bank, and they try and see if they can, with the software, close up any gaps in the software or look for any bugs in the software to stop people or black hat hackers hacking into their software. So what these white hat hackers have done is they've actually hacked into a beta social credit system that's going to be implemented in the future. And it can only be implemented in the future if there is a economic crash. What are we seeing the stepping stones of right now? What are we seeing right now? And what are we seeing right now?
An economic collapse.
Yeah.
A recession.
Inflation is accelerating like a runaway train. Petrol has been hiking up due to what I call artificial scarcity tactics, which is really withholding the resource. And for the most part, though, it's got everything to do with OPEC. So the inflation, the greed, the government corruption, and a handful of oil companies who are controlling the supply. And so you've got this possible economic crash that's imminent. And if that's going to happen and people are going to suffer, because if you own businesses, if you own property, even if you own money in the bank, like what are we seeing now in China? They can't get money out of their bank, millions of them. The banks are not giving money to any of those people, and the governments are now saying, oh, we need to talk to the banks, we'll go and talk to them. But people have been closed out of their accounts. They can't buy food, they can't pay their bills. And if that happens on a global scale, we're going to see a lot of people suffering. So if we see people suffering and then we see a solution come along, what are people going to do? They will possibly jump at the solution. And so the solution that I saw in this information leak was one of a class system. So the system is made up of classes. You've got the common class, which are people that will obey, people that will comply. You get a UBI, Universal Basic Income. But not only that, you also have these exemption certificates. So you have to be exempt. If you are not exempt from the vax, if you're in this common class, you are not exempt from carbon credits. Now they've got another class. So if you misbehave, you get put into the restricted class. Then the class after that is the quarantine class. And I think I might have a couple of pictures that I got, which I'll show the people. So this is the quarantine class here. So it's got you get account limits put on, you get asset limits put on you, you have to have a certain vaccination status and your carbon score status as well, and you only got a certain amount of money in your bank. So the more you misbehave, the less you have in your bank. Now if we move to the fourth class, which is the sovereign class, and in this class you are exempt from the vax status, you are exempt from any carbon score, you can make as much money as you want, you can accumulate as much assets as you want, and that's the sovereign class. So I'm thinking if we see this been implemented after an economic crash, people will actually jump in it. What I see is the middle class and a few of the rich will come back down into the middle class, and people will actually go, yes, yes. But they don't realize that there's actually this elite rich who are in the sovereign class. And seeing this classism is going to be, I would say, one of the most divisive things we've seen in this system before. And it'll probably divide us even more. So it's something for people to be wary of. And I'll put the links down to the link video if you guys want to see that.
It just is infuriating. And it is, like you say, a tyrannical, abusive use of that word sovereign, which meaning is sacred in terms of being a child of God, in terms of having my own mind, heart, and spirit, which is supposed to be available to all, because all of those of us who came into this world was by way of a spirit that created it. It was by way of a creator who invented sovereignty. So to use that word and exploit people, the innocent, and to abuse it in such a way that it is weaponized is just beyond the most evil. And to be sold as this is going to make you happy, this is out of caring and kindness.
They've taken that word, and this is where I get back to the word magic. They've taken the word sovereign from us and shoved it back in our face to represent themselves in this class.
And like you say, keep sharing and alerting and awakening, because we can still not comply. We can still speak out. We can still do whatever we can to counteract these classes. It looks like the fourth industrial revolution is about to be underway in Auckland City. Is that correct? In a few cities around the world.
Yes, they have planned for this as well. There was a document that came from the council that talked about that and about how they wanted New Zealand to become one of the first developed smart cities in the world. So they're really pushing towards the smart city transition before 2030. So everything's aiming to get done before 2030 because it's the end of that cycle. And there's that's a major turning point or major point for them to get all this rolled out and done. So
and we're onto it. We are onto them, and we have generations of ancestors who have fought these battles in their sleep, and we will continue to connect with those ancestors, those on the other side, who are stronger, who will. The heel will be bruised, but actually the head will be cut off in an instant, or something graphic like that. There are
the head of the snake.
Yeah, that's it. And we alone to win the battle, and that's why we connect one with each other of like minds, heart, and spirits. That's why we connect with our generations that are gone past. We connect with all those that are outside of ourselves, of the galactic, of the universe, because they are bigger than any plan or fourth industrial or smart city that Schwab's can put together. I think, is it Vandana Shiva? She said there's 1% of them and 99% of us. So we can win. We, like what we are doing, need to talk about, converse, help, support each other in understanding what we can do in our small space right here in my little pod. I can still do great things. And that's karakia, prayer, talking, listening, sharing, and then that's what I'm going to do.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And here are some other things that I think we can do too is know your community and neighbors. I think it's important to go over to your neighbor and meet your neighbor if you haven't met him before, and, you know, connect with them. And, you know, if you're skillful in something, offer your skills, you know, somehow. It could be, you know, unconditional or conditional. It's up to you. But I think knowing who's in your community and your community groups, getting in touch with them, even creating food forests, community gardens, I think is some really good initiatives, and community food cupboards. I've had the I wouldn't say privilege, but I've just done it out of my own heart since I've been back, is I voluntarily go to different organizations during the week, pick up loads of food and take them around Auckland to food cupboards. So I do that out of my own time and my own petrol and that. And I think it's important that, you know, we can do those sorts of things. Community sharing of tools, could be clothing, and even we can do some basic things, learn how to fish too, learn how to hunt, because you don't know what's going to happen with the trends that's going on. You know, you might have to rely on your skills to survive.
I guess if we're talking about holistic well-being, yeah, everything that you've just indicated, get out of the city, know our neighbour, grow our own food, learn to hunt and fish, have faith, and trust in ourselves and trust in the limitless source of love called God, called Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother, and our angels and guardian angels are there waiting to be employed. So armor up,
speak to them, connect with them,
connect. Absolutely,
you can even command them, can't you? To help you.
Apparently, let's do it and join together forces.
Cool. Are there any upcoming events or projects you're working on, or anything that you want to share with us?
Oh, yeah, look, the website ngatiConsult.co.nz is up and running. I'm available for culture supervision and for money management programs. We wrote a book during lockdown called Dynamically Me. That's available for sale and talks about dynamics of the person, of you, of me, and imagine combining all those dynamics to overcome evil and prevail the truth. Awesome. So that's on the website, www.ngatiConsult.co.nz. Otherwise, yeah, we'll catch up on Facebook, in the street. What happens if internet goes down? What are we going to do?
Well, that's it. What does happen when then we can't move to electronics? Now, this is something I wanted to talk about a little, and you're right, when you hit that on the head, I think there are some natural changes that are happening. I mean, we're seeing now solar flares coming from the sun. There's a new solar flare that just erupted this past week, and apparently it's heading towards Earth. They call them CMEs, or coronal mass ejections, and they're blasts that come from the sun. And apparently there's going to be some that will knock out our electricity and power, and anything that's electronic will also be knocked out. Now, the magnetic poles are also shifting, which is the true north magnetic pole is actually shifting. It used to be above Canada, but apparently now it's heading towards Siberia, which is towards Russia. And so that magnetic pole is shifting, and if it shifts so much, there could be a magnetic flip, they call it, a magnetic flip, or a cosmic event because of that pole shifting. There's a cosmic event, which also aligns with what's going to happen in 2030, which apparently is going to be a cosmic event. As the Kala Yuga ends, a cosmic event begins, and this leads into every Manvantara, which is the completing of the cycle. So the last Manvantara happened in 4450 BC. What happened then was the Great Flood. And what's going to happen now, people are projecting that it could possibly be a cosmic event.
I've just realised that your use of the word Mantara might be similar to the way we use the word dispensation, and that Noah led that dispensation of the flood.
Yes.
And Jesus Christ had a dispensation of his own. And yeah, if we're talking about seals, as described in Revelations of the Testament, it talks about 6 seals, and the 7th seal is about to be opened, and how it evolves or how it comes about. The events that are occurring are in line with what we are told through Scripture, what we are told through prophets and prophecies that have been told before and which are currently being revealed to us today, what scientists are saying, what there's no such thing as a conspiracy theorist anymore, because conspiracies are in the 3 months or 2 weeks.
The 2 years, a lot of them have come true.
Exactly. So there's no such thing as conspiracy theory. There are theories that are widely and openly proven and given time. So nothing can be given a closed door. There is no narrative or no story that can be squashed or taken lightly. We're talking about an age of information and an age of recreating and reality, and this is a spiritual war.
People term this coming of the Lord. Some term it as the Christ consciousness coming, the awakening coming. I also wanted to talk a little bit, before we finish, a little bit about the Antichrist. And I know I don't want to give it too much energy, but I just want to bring it out to make people a little bit more informed about what I've come across. Now, if you've heard recently, I think like 2 weeks ago, the Large Hadron Collider, which is the LHC in Cern, has been activated. It's where they smash the particles together at a very fast speed. They clash, and then they create what they say are little mini black holes. And so the Large Hadron Collider at CERN got reactivated, and they've been ramping it up big time. And I know many people have had headaches, sleepless nights over the past 2 weeks as well. And if people don't know what it is and what it does, it pretty much is used to smash these particles together. But what is it really? What does it really do? And I'll put a quote up that I got, and I'll show you this quote. Okay, so it's called Penetrating Through the 11th Dimension. So using the gravity's rainbow theory, scientists determined that slightly more energy is needed to create mini black holes at the Large Hadron Collider, or LHC, than previously thought. Until now, the LHC has searched for many black holes with energy levels below 5.3 TeVs, and TeVs means tera electron volts. According to the gravity's rainbow theory, this energy is too low. Instead, the model predicts that black holes can form at energy levels of at least 9.5 TeV in 6 dimensions and 11.9 TeV in 10 dimensions. Since the LHC is designed to reach 14 TeVs in future runs, this predicted energy requirement should be accessible for black hole production. But here's the kicker. In this comment from Sergio Bertolucci, who is the director of Cern, he says, the Large Hadron Collider could open a doorway to another dimension, and out this doorway might come something, or we might send something through it. Now, here's a coincidence. I call these Cern coincidences. Cern is short for the horned god Cernunnos. Cernunnos is the god of the underworld. This is in Greek Roman terminology. The town where Cern is located is called Apolliochum. Apolliochum is the name of that town. In Roman times, where a temple existed in honor of Apollyon, the destroyer, and the Romans believed that it was a gateway to the underworld. So Cern, the actual location of Cern, is on top of this previously existing temple. And in Revelations 9:11, it says, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue, his name is Apollyon. So
there are no coincidences, are there?
There are no coincidences with this. And this is from Revelation 9:1 to 11. I want to read this out. To him was given the key of the bottomless pit, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. Now, you can't tell me that this Cern is there for just for smashing things together. I think there's something more. And guess who's overseen this Cern? Klaus Schwab, personally overseen it. So I think people can do their own research, look into it. But it's interesting how it's all symbolic and what you said in terms of there's a spiritual battle going on right now. And who knows what will happen around 2030. I'm definitely going to be around till then.
And we're going to be armoured up. And you're right, the Antichrist has many helpers. The Antichrist has many... Satan has an army, and now my understanding of that army is that they are on a leash, and as time gets closer to that cosmic event, whether that be the Saviour's return or the an event of wonder and an event that we're waiting for of liberation, as we get closer to that time, then yes, Satan and his followers and his army are certainly going to ramp it up. And I don't think we should be naive about those forces. We need to be fully aware that Klaus and Satan's followers are everywhere. They look innocent. They come as children. They come as puppy dogs. They come as beautiful people, priests. They come as nuns. They come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, which is why it's so important that we, strengthen our own spirit of discernment, our spirit of judgment. Trust no one. But connect to those like minds like ourselves who have a greater faith. But like you, we can't let our guard down for a minute, because you're right, the Satan and his followers are ramping up their game. Ramping up all around us. Adversaries everywhere. It does not want us to win. It does not want us to be victorious. It does not want unity. It doesn't want love and peace. And so the way to counteract that is through love and peace. I was last week we had a bit of a week, couple of incidences in the family. We were trying to come together, to go on vacation, go on holiday, and things happened. We knew straight away, yep, that's Satan doing his thing to keep us from being a loving family. And of course, we counteracted it by doubling our prayers. We have committed ourselves as parents to double up on all things that are good. For us, scriptures bring peace. For us, prayer, karakia, oroporua, waiata bring peace. So yeah, we've decided to double up. We're determined. You're right. There is a ramping up of Antichrist. Look, I have to give homage also, not only to yourselves as alternative media, you be the judge. But what about Leighton Baker? What about Chantel Baker? What about Vinnie Eastwood, Billy Takahika, Lingo Louis? Is it Lingo Louis?
Yes.
They are doing their utmost. Counterspin doing a great job, just stirring up
getting the awareness out.
Yep. And thinking. So yeah, let's give voices for freedom. NZDSOS, NZTSOS, NZ Lawyers, Ashley the Advocate. We dig in Marston. I just want to pay homage to those courageous ones like yourself who are having the conversations. But I do worry that if internet goes down, that will it slow us down? No, probably not. It'll probably harden us up even more, and we'll just go harder at connecting with our neighbours, like you suggested here.
If you're with your communities and you know your community, you know your neighbor, even if the power goes out, you can still connect with one another in the physical. And I think this is where we've lost a little bit of that over this technological age. I've got friends that only want to meet up in person now. So I go up and meet them at places like the parks or whatever. We go for walks and we talk about different things and all that. And it's really awesome because you're getting a bit of nature, a bit of exercise, you're conversing face to face, and you're getting that connectiveness. And I think we're all connected. We've got this, what do they call it? The silver cord. We've all got the silver cord that we connect with everybody. We don't realize it, but we do. Even a lot of the NDEs, the people that have had near-death experiences, have said we are connected with the silver cord. And when you meet someone, that bond and that cord becomes even stronger. And this leads me to say that, yes, at one stage, I went to church back in the day. I moved away from the church and that now. I still call myself, I'm very spiritual, but I have moved back in touch with the divine, or with God as you call it, or with the supreme, whatever, Eeyore. To be honest, I don't think any of those can define who and what God is, because it's beyond our perceptions and our beliefs of what it actually is, this infinite supreme being. But I've connected back with that, and I know as we move towards 2030, thousands, if not millions, more people will connect back with God, the divine, and the renaissance that's here right now as we move towards our, I would say, ascension in a way.
Trust yourself. Trust in that God, that creator of ourselves and of this world, and in the process that we are here for a purpose. We are here in this time. We are special, and we will win that battle of good over evil. Yeah, kia kaha, kia manoa nui, kia moia. Tēnā koe tai, tēnā koe, Wiri.
Tēnā koe, ka kite.
Ka kite anō.